Hello, everyone, and welcome to Experts Live Show, our official weekly series leading up to Experts Live Emirates happening on November 11th in Dubai. Each week, we're going to bring with us one of our amazing speakers to give us a taste of the technical content and insights that you expect at the event. And today, I'm excited to be joined by Hannes, who's going to be sharing insights about Azure Central Network. And just before I start, if you have not registered yet with Experts Live, make sure to secure a spot and looking forward for seeing you soon. And now, hand it over to Hannes. Hannes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you for joining me to this session. Thank you for joining me to the Experts Live in Dubai. My name is Hannes, or Johannes Lagler-Grüner. I'm a lead cloud architect in one of the biggest consulting company in Austria. I'm a Microsoft Security and Azure MVP since, I think, at the moment, 5 years right now. So what you can see, I have a lot of experience with Microsoft Azure in different areas. So I'm working a lot with development, DevOps, and so on. But my main focus is infrastructure and also network and security. You can find me on my YouTube channel. I have my separate YouTube channel. I also have my cloud blogger blog. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, X, GitHub, and so on. So today we are talking about one of my favorite services in Microsoft Azure. We are covering the Azure Network Manager. And from the agenda, we have three types. We have three agenda types. Why Microsoft Network Manager? What is Microsoft Manager and how can we implement and also use Microsoft Network Manager? At the beginning, we are in a theory section, so I will explain how we can use it. And then when it comes to how can we implement it, how can we use it, we will switch to a live demo and I will try to explain what can we do with this service and the performance and the benefits what there are. Okay, so let's start with the why. When we think about your Azure environment, we are normally starting with an enterprise scale framework. So inside an enterprise scale framework, you have your application landings or your platform landing zones, normally your management environment, your management landing zone, your identity, and also your connectivity. All architectures or all landing zones are connected together, normally with an hub and spoke architecture. You have inside your connectivity platform landing zone, you have your hub VNet, you have maybe there an V1 or an VPN gateway, you have your firewall and so on and so forth. So over the time, so when you are implementing the basics, over the time you are realizing, okay, you need also landing zones, so application landing zones. And this is the starting point where we are implementing maybe AVD or SAP or application XYZ. So what we can see here is the network infrastructure and also the peering, the hub and spoke architecture will increase dramatically over the time. And this is only for one region. When we go further and talk about multi-region resiliency, it will be much more complex. So in this case, I have West Europe in my portfolio. I also have Austria East. And you can see I have two hub and spoke architectures, and the hub and spoke are normally connected together, and you have your different spokes with your different landing zones, application platform, and so on and so on. So the question here is, how can we handle this architecture that will increase over the time much more and more? So the problem here is, or the customer challenge is, what we are seeing in the past is the complexity increase a lot. So the second problem, what we are seeing is no centralization, which means you don't have a single point of overview about your architecture, about your environment, about your configuration environment. If you want to increase the architecture, you have an operational overhead. So it's really, really hard to increase traditional hub and spoke architectures over more and more regions. And at the end, if you are configuring something wrong, errors are really cost efficiency. So over the time, you will see, okay, if there's an error and something is going down, it's really hard to troubleshoot and to know, okay, what happens. So The question is, what can we do to centralize, to have a better overview, to have maybe an automation to increase your environments? The answer here is Azure Network Manager. Azure Network Manager is a product. It's a platform as a service project. It's fully managed by Microsoft. So you are responsible for the service, for the configuration for the service. It's high available. It's high scalable. So it's really, really important to know, okay, you have that service and you can replicate the configuration across regions, across the globe. So what you prefer. The main functionality from Azure Network Manager is virtual network management, user-defined route management, security admin rules, and also IP address management. So when we think in the past, IPAM and IPAM service inside Microsoft Azure is really hard to find. So there are third-party services available. There's also a community service available. Right now, we have the ability to use IPAM inside Azure Network Manager. So it's currently in public preview, but I think in the future, it will be a really, really cool functionality inside Azure Network Manager. So let's go a bit more into the details about the different areas, the different sections, what you can manage with Network Manager. The first one is manage virtual networks. So when we think about your hub and spoke architecture, we have to peer the network, the virtual networks together. So together to the hub, together to maybe to other spokes if you want to implement a full mesh architecture. So the benefits about Azure Network Manager, you can implement a low latency with high bandwidth connection between different virtual networks using VNet peering. So it's nothing new. So VNet peering, you can also use it manually per ClickOps or via infrastructure as code. So it's nothing new. But what's really, really interesting with Azure Network Manager, you can define stages, you can define rollout stages based on different network groups. So this is the next part that we want to discuss. And also implement the stage in your different regions. The next thing, what's really interesting, normally when you peer your network and you change your network IP address space, so you add a space maybe to your virtual network, you have to synchronize the configuration to the peered virtual networks. If you're using Azure Virtual Network Manager, you don't have to synchronize this because it's automatically synchronized in the backend. And it's also available. It's currently in preview, in public preview. A subnet peering is also possible with Azure Virtual Network Manager. So I always get the question from my customers, why should they use subnet peering? But what's the benefit about it? When we think about you have your IP address space. So you have maybe two regions with the same IP address space. Could be. Normally, you cannot connect these two virtual networks together because we have to have separate IP address spaces and there's no overlapping functionality allowed here. But what we can do is we can say, okay, we have maybe from the second region an IP address space, but we have to connect to another subnet. And if there's no overlapping available, you can only connect those two subnets together. The benefits here with Azure Virtual Network Manager, instead of the normally traditional implementation, you have an GUI-based configuration, so you can configure this in Azure Virtual Network Manager and roll out stage-based. Okay, so let's go ahead, and that's the main functionality about network configuration. So let's go ahead about user-defined routes. If we implement a hub and spoke architecture, normally the spokes cannot communicate together. So there's no connection between the spokes. What you can do is you can define a full mesh architecture. Then you have a direct connection between your spokes. But normally in a best case environment, you have a hub and spoke architecture. And inside your hub, you have your firewall, your third-party firewall, your Azure firewall, whatever. what you have to do is you have to define a user-defined route and assign it to your subnets to say, hey, if we are not inside our IP address space, please route everything to the hub. And this is normally defined over an user-defined route. And what Microsoft Network Manager can do for you, you can do this automatically. So you can roll out user-defined routes to your environment, to all your subnets at the moment, and also to your all future subnets that you want to add to your virtual networks. And the Network Manager will automatically add the user-defined route to your subnet. The benefits here is normally you have a limitation about 1,000 user-defined routes in a single route table. So in 400 routes in a traditional route table with Azure Virtual Network Manager. You have a limit of about 1,000 user-defined routes in your single route table. So it's nice to have, but normally we have enough with the traditional way. So Azure Virtual Network also supports up to 1,000 virtual networks that you can configure in your virtual network table. And this is, in my point of view, it's not really a good architecture design. So if you implement Azure Virtual Network Manager, Azure Virtual Network Manager will create a user-defined route and will place the service item into a Microsoft managed resource group starting with AVNM _. And the problem here is normally in a normal configured environment, it's not a problem because it's created in the backend. But in an enterprise scale framework, you are normally enforcing tags on resource groups, for example, and you cannot assign a tag to a Microsoft managed resource group because it's generated in the backend. And if this happens, the user-defined route cannot be created because the resource group is not available, and Microsoft cannot add the service to or the user-defined route to this resource group. So this is, in my point of view, one of the biggest problem here. But I have defined a custom policy that will allow all resource groups starting with AVNM, and then it's not a problem, so it's working fine. Okay, user-defined route. Really, really important to have in place if you want to implement your firewalls in your hub architecture. The next thing what we can do is manage security admin rules. So this is one of the really, really important functionality inside Network Manager. Is only available with the Network Manager. So let's think about traditional network security groups. So network security groups are normally assigned to a subnet. So you have your subnet, your network interface maybe, and you can assign network security groups to exactly this functionality or to these services. You have normally two action types, allow or deny. You have your default configuration based on higher level priority. And you can start with priority 100 and go to, I think, 1024 priority and can define, okay, what's allowed. It's an access control list. What you can do with Azure Security Admin Rules is you can assign those network security admin rules to virtual networks. And the difference here is we have three action types. We have allow, we have deny, we have always allow. So what's the difference here is, it's really easy to explain. So when you have your traffic, so you have a traffic, it's coming to the virtual network or the network interface. Normally, the first thing what we have to clarify is the network security group. In this case, when we enable admin security rules, the first rule is based on the virtual network. It's the security admin rule. And when the security admin rule have the rule defined, okay, it's allowed, for example, port 80, then it goes ahead and asks the network security rules. And ask, okay, if it's is it allowed port to access to the virtual machine or to the network interface over port 80, yes or no. The second thing what we have is always allow. So in this case, the network security group say, okay, it's allowed to go to the network interface over port 80. Then it doesn't ask the network security rule anymore. And the third thing what you have is deny. So we can define here, for example, global configurations inside security admin rules.
Let me just ask a question here, Hannes. So what you're trying to say that when it comes to the security admin rules, just to understand it, because I'm a bit confused here. So is security admin rules is taking over NHGs, or it's applied, or what is actually, if I'm applying both rules at the same time, let's say allow in NHG and deny in security admin rules, or vice versa. So which one is taking over?
So you can use both. So you can have both network security admin rules and network security rules. The thing here is the first thing when it comes to the traffic, when the traffic comes to the device, the first thing is security admin rules on the virtual network level will ask, okay, is it allowed to go to the port 80 to the service per default? No? It's not bound to a subnet. It's not bound to an network interface. It's bound to the virtual network. And the second thing, that the next layer is the network security group. So you can have both together, and you can also define your global rules, for example. So this is one of the benefits. You can have your for example, global configuration about what's allowed inside or what's not allowed inside my my network. Oh my God, I'm sorry. What's not allowed inside my network, and you can roll out this to all your virtual networks. For example, it's not allowed to access to port, for example, 3389 to high privileged virtual machines inside the virtual network. And when it goes ahead and asks the network security group, and the network security group team says, okay, it's allowed to enable port 3389 or port 80, it's the flow will not ask the network security group, because you have centralized disabled the functionality. So the first thing with the higher priority is always the network security group. The admin security group. I'm sorry.
The admin security group.
Yeah, and the next one is always the network security group.
Great.
So
yeah.
The benefits here are, if you have an enterprise operating model, so you a centralized CCOE, Cloud Center of Excellence, defining your global configuration over all your environments, you can roll out everything to all virtual networks, and you can say, hey, the teams, the application owner teams can maintain their own NSGs if they want. So you are defining the baseline, and their own teams or the application teams can define their own NSGs or also maintaining their own NSGs. The next thing what's really interesting is emergency benefits. So if you have to quickly block an high risky traffic, for example, from for a specified port, you can roll out in seconds the deny functionality over all your virtual networks. So you have to define the new security admin rule, roll out the configuration over all your virtual networks, and the traffic will be blocked. And the next thing is, for example, many resources are provisioned. So, for example, you have your virtual network. You have a really big IP address space inside your virtual network assigned, and your customers are adding new subnets. Normally, inside a new subnet, and no NSG will be assigned automatically when you are working with the Azure portal. With the security admin rules, you have a baseline, because the security admin rule is assigned to the virtual network, not directly to the subnet. So if you add a new subnet to the virtual network, the baseline will be automatically assigned to the subnet. So you have here also your protection benefits. So when it comes to the new functionalities, so Microsoft will add new functionalities continuously to the network manager. We have here the destination filtering. So From the destination filtering, normally we have an IP address space. Now we can also assign network group. I will explain it in a few minutes what network group is. So you can define for source and destination right now in a preview version network groups. And you also have the policy to use network intent policies for the deployment. So it's also really, really interesting. So the next functionality and the next feature about Network Manager is the IP address management. It's currently in preview, but what you can do is you can assign your virtual networks. So you can create your IP address pool. You can also assign non-overlapping CIDRs to Azure resource groups. You can also see, okay, how many IP addresses are currently in use, what IP addresses are currently in use for IP addresses inside Microsoft Azure. You can also create a separate pool for with reserved IP addresses, for example, for on-premise, if you want to implement also in the IPAM architecture, the on-premise environment. And for sure, you can also use the IP address for other cloud environments. Also, for example, you can also implement infrastructure as code to manage the IPAM functionality. So enough from the theory. Let's go ahead and go to okay, how can we implement exactly this?
Yeah, great. So just before we jump into that implementation part, when it comes to the IP address management, I remember back days when I used to really play with big entities. They do have thousands of subnets and hundreds of VNets, and literally conflict is everywhere. So just to also for the sake of really understanding the IP address management, is it a kind of policy that I will apply and then it's restrict, or it's just like central management for the IP, and then this is where you're gonna have full visibility about your IP, and this is your reference to make sure that you are not truly like misusing the IP addresses, or you duplicate consuming them somewhere here and there.
Mm-hmm. So it's really centralized. So you are configuring exactly this inside your network manager. You're also assigning your IP addresses inside the network manager, and you have an overview about all your environments. So it's really, really interesting. So you can assign your virtual networks and see, okay, what happens inside the virtual network. What you can do, it's not policy-based. What you can do is you can assign it automatically over infrastructure as code for sure, or you can do this manually.
Interesting. Yeah. So let's see that in demo.
Okay. So the next question is, how can we start with Azure Virtual Network Manager? So the process here is really clear. First of all, you have to provision Network Manager, and inside the provisioning, you have to define your scope. The scope over the virtual networks, the scope over the management group, or whatever. Then in the next step, you are creating your network groups. Then you're creating your configuration, and at the end, you are deploying your configuration. So let's go a bit more to the details about the scope. So what you can do is you're provisioning, for example, the virtual network manager inside your management application landing zone. And inside the application landing zone, you can define, okay, what is my space? What is my scope? The scope could be your subscription. You only want to manage one subscription. You can go ahead, go upper and also implement your management groups, for example. So your root management group or your custom defined management group. Or what you can also do is your tenant level. You can go one step ahead and say, okay, I want to implement my tenant level. The tenant level is a really cool functionality if you want to have the configuration cross tenants. So you have more tenants, maybe your productive tenant, your dev tenant, and you want to use a single configuration over both tenants. But there are some limitations, what we see in a few minutes when we talk about network groups. What you can do, you can start small, think big. So you can define your scope at the beginning, so test the functionality, and you can also change the scope later on if you want. And yeah, then you're provisioning the service. Keep in mind, you only can have one network manager in one region. So it's really, really fast to implement. It's really fast to deploy. The next thing what you can do is you're defining, or what you have to do is you're defining your network groups. So network groups are global container that includes your virtual network resources, only virtual network resources. Is it a VNet or a subnet, what you prefer? You can define your network groups based on your environment, for example, dev, test, prod, pre-prod, staging, or by team, what you prefer. And you have two assignment options. The first assignment option is a static, and the second one is a dynamic option, what you have. So let's go ahead to the really easy one, the static network option. So you're defining your group and say, hey, I have my scope defined, for example, my management group. And when you want to add a static virtual network, the virtual network manager will scan based on your scope all your environment and check, okay, I have, for example, 20 virtual networks. What kind of virtual networks do you want to add? And here is one, at the moment, limitation about tenant level. If you are implementing cross-tenant level scoping, so you have two tenants, you can only define a static network group at the moment to assign your virtual networks from a different tenant. You cannot use a dynamic network group membership, so it's really, really interesting to have a dynamic in place. What you can do is a dynamic implementation means you can implement your network group and based on different sections. For example, if there is a specified tag on the resource group, or is it a specified tag on the virtual network, or a specified name assigned to the virtual network, the virtual network will be automatically assigned to the dynamic group. What you can do to what you have to do to manage the virtual network groups based on dynamic membership, you can use the built-in rules, so network resource contributor or resource policy contributor, so that's the built-in rules. If you want to go more fine granularity, you have to can use the three different policy permissions. So example, policy assignment right, policy definition right, and network group join action. So that's our really defined granularity permissions what you can assign to the users to manage the network groups, the dynamic network groups. Okay, so that's it from the network group. So let's go to the network configuration. What you have to do is, from the configuration perspective, you can define your network configuration. A virtual network configuration can have different network groups. So you can have up to 2 network groups connected to your configuration. And what you can do is you can define your topology. So there are different topologies available when you're defining your network configuration. So the first one and the most common one is hub and spoke architecture. So you have your hub where, for example, is placed your firewall, is your VPN gateway defined and so on. And you have your spokes, your different landing zones, your application, your platform landing zones and so on. In some situations, you can also define a mesh. So this means you don't have an hub. You're connecting all virtual networks together. The benefit here is you have a lower latency. You have it's a lower latency between the landing zones because you have a direct connection, not over a firewall. Could be also a problem. And the third one, what you can also do is a mixed version, hub and spoke with direct connect. So this means if you want to communicate to on-premise services, you are always routed over your hub and hub virtual network, and the communication between the spokes is directly in this case. So that are the 3 different options what you have when you are creating a network architecture. Okay, and the next thing is you're deploying your configuration. So in this case, we are defining where are my virtual networks. So you can have different virtual networks in the same region or cross regions, what you prefer. So if you have different virtual networks across regions, you have to deploy the configuration in both regions. Then keep in mind the deployment will take a few seconds. So in the beginning of Network Manager, it takes minutes. At the moment, it's really seconds. And you have a limitation. In my point of view, the limitation is really, really high. So if you have a customer with more than 15,000 Azure subscriptions, you cannot apply a virtual network policy to this subscription. So this is really the limitation. But 15,000 Azure subscriptions is really, really high. And once more, cross-tenant support is at the moment only available for static group membership. So that's really important to know. Okay, so let's go to the first live demo. What we are doing here is to get a better overview about the service itself, what you can configure, where you can find the configuration steps and so on. Then we are deploying the network configuration and we are validating the configuration. So when we are going to the architecture, it looks like the following. So I have my Entra IT tenant, I have my root tenant management group, I have my different sub-management groups. And you can see here I have two subnets. I have my application landing zone and I have my connectivity landing zone. Inside the connectivity landing zone, I have my hub network with an VPN gateway, also a bastion host with an Azure firewall. And I have my two spokes, also with a virtual machine assigned. And normally there's no peering available. There's no connection between the hubs and spokes. There's nothing configured. So what we're doing in the first step is we are connecting automatically over Azure Virtual Network Manager the spokes to the hub, and we'll test, okay, the functionality is everything is working fine and so on. So let's go ahead and go to my environment. So what you can see here is I have two network groups. So you can see here resource groups, I have my resource group for my core environment, so for my network environment, and also for my virtual machines in different subscriptions, so the connectivity subscription as well, the application subscription. Inside my core network environment, you can see I have here everything configured, what's required. So I have on top my virtual network manager, my bastion host, I have public IP addresses, I have my firewall policy manager, my virtual network gateway, my spoke VNet, and also a key vault where my password is stored for the virtual machines. So let's go inside the network manager, the service itself. So here's the overview pane, and what you can see here, I'm provisioned the network manager in the Germany West Central. And when we go to the right side, we can see here the features that are activated at the moment. We have the connectivity, the security admin, and the routing configuration enabled. And what you can also see here is the scope. In my point of view, in my environment, I have the scope tenant inside my tenant. I have no cross-tenant configuration at the moment configured. I have here one management group assigned and 0 subscriptions directly assigned. So what you can do is you can change the scope later on. So in my case, I have the root management group defined, but what you can also do, you can assign different areas, different subscriptions outside your management group if you want. So it's possible later on also. Okay, so on the left side, the normally configuration areas, activity log, access control, EM, diagnostic, you have in place. So this is the default configuration. The first thing what we have to do is we have to define a network group. So in my case, I've prepared a network group without a group member. So it's empty. So you can see here, there's no group available inside my network group. I go inside my network manager group and click here on group membership. In this case, I want to assign a static group membership. So click here to the groups, group membership, and on top you can here define your add. And here you have two different options. You can say, okay, I want to add a manual member or create an Azure policy to dynamically add members. So the policy is defined, you can define based on tags, based on VNet name, and so on. In my case, I want to add a manual member. So here, once more, Azure Network Manager will scan based on your defined scope and search for all your virtual networks what are available in your environment. So in my case, I want to select at the beginning one virtual network, the spoke one network, assign the network. You can see here, update network group, and now it's available. Take a few seconds, I'm sorry. And here you can see manually added, and it's available. The next thing, what we have to do is we have to define a configuration. Inside the configuration, you have here the ability to select or create a new configuration. And here you have the ability to define your connectivity configuration. This one is a new one, say UI-based, your security admin configuration, or your user routing configuration. In my case, I've prepared everything, and you can see here, I have one connectivity configuration in place, one security, and one routing, but with the status not deployed at the moment. So I'm going ahead and define here, check here my network configuration. And inside my network configuration, you can see I have one virtual network assigned. Why is it assigned? Because it's a member of my resource group, my network group that is assigned to exactly this configuration. Normally you can define, okay, my configuration is a hub and spoke architecture. In my case, it's a hub and spoke architecture. The hub is predefined, so it's the hub network, and the spokes are based on this case for my network resource group, also my network group. So here you also can see your status about your topology. You can expand your topology if you want. And here you can see, okay, when I'm going to deploy the configuration, I have here my hub, and here is my network group that is assigned. And when I expand here the configuration, you can see here, okay, here's my hub. And when I go here to the left side, here you can see your spokes. So when I deploy right now, the configuration appearing between hub and spoke will be automatically created. So here you can see the different configurations what I have. If you want to implement a hub and spoke with direct connect, you have to enable the direct connect functionality. If you want to implement a global mesh, you have to enable the global mesh functionality during the creation of the configuration. Okay, so now I have my configuration in place. You can see here the connection status is failed, so it's not available at the moment. And right now I want to deploy the configuration. Click on deploy, select your configuration. It's pre-configured, or it's filled out because I'm inside the network configuration. And what I have to do right now, I have to define the target location, the target region. In my case, I want to deploy the configuration into Germany West Central. The reason is really simple. My network, my hub and my spoke networks are located or based in Germany West Central. Click on next. You can see here the configuration will be added and click on deploy. Okay, in the backend, the configuration will be deployed. In a few seconds, we will see on the virtual network, okay, the peering between hub and spoke is available. So let's go to the network itself. Here inside my VM network, you have here our spoke 1. When we go to the peerings, click on refresh. Exactly right now we have here the AVNM virtual network is automatically configured in this case, and it's working fine. So when we go back to the virtual network spoke 2, click here to the peering, the virtual network spoke 2 is not a member of the network group inside the network manager. So we don't have a peering here right now. What we can do is now, when we add a new virtual network, we can go and assign, for example, a tag to the virtual network and create a dynamic group. And over the time, if the virtual network group or the virtual network manager checks, okay, there's a new virtual network available with a specified tag, it will be automatically assigned to the network group and the configuration will be deployed automatically in the backend if it's in the same region. So what we are doing now is we are going back to the virtual network manager, go to the network group and simulate exactly this process. So we are adding here a manually virtual network to the network group. Go to add member and select the second virtual network, in this case spoke 2. Click on add and you can see here it's updating right now. It will take a few seconds. Come on. Okay, now it's finished. Let's go back to the spoke 2, click on refresh, voila, it's automatically provisioned in the backend. So this is a really important functionality what you have to, what you can use here, automatically bring your new virtual network into your environment based on Azure Virtual Network Manager. So when we go to the VMs itself, so I'm now connected to both VMs in the spoke, and here you can see I'm unable to communicate to the other spoke. The reason for that, it's really simple, because we have a hub and spoke architecture, we have a firewall, but we don't have a routing table in place. And that's the reason why we are going to the next section from my presentation and talk about user-defined route configuration. So what we can do with user-defined route configuration is really simple. We have the same functionality like traditional user-defined routes. You can define your next hop type. It could be a virtual network gateway. It could be a virtual network. It could be internet or a virtual appliance or none. And you also have the ability to assign the destination based on IP addresses, based on service tag, what you prefer. And yeah, let's go ahead. And we want to deploy the user-defined route configuration to my environment and also validate. What will happen in the backend is we are assigning right now here user-defined route to our spoke subnets, to our spoke virtual networks, and say, hey, if we want to communicate with IP addresses outside of our space, please use the next hop, the Azure firewall that is available in the hub virtual network. So define the default route and say, okay, I want to route exactly this to the firewall. So let's go to the environment. Here you can see I'm unable to trace route, so the trace route is not available, so we are not connected to any firewall with the next hub and so on. So it's not possible to define here trace route, also the ping. Let's go back to the network manager. So we are going to the configuration and have a look to, click on refresh, and we can see here the deployment status for the network configuration is now in a status deployed. Let's go to the routing configuration. So I'm selecting here right now my routing configuration and go inside the configuration. And here what you have is you can define your collection rules. You can have up to what you prefer collection rules. In my case, I've defined one collection rule, and the collection rule is assigned to a target network group. It's the same functionality like the connectivity configuration. In this case, I have my network rule, my routing table configuration, and it will be assigned to all virtual networks, to all subnets inside my network manager group, in this case. Then I go ahead and go to the rules, and that's really simple. I have here my configuration, and what you can see here is I have my destination type. In this case, is a IP address. This is the default route 0.0.0.0/0. And my next hop, in this case, I want to route everything to this IP address space to my virtual appliance, and this is the private IP address of my firewall. So let's validate exactly the configuration. Go back, go to the firewall, And here you can see, here my firewall is exactly this IP address. So after the deployment, everything should be routed to my firewall. I have pre-configured my firewall to allow the traffic from one spoke to another, but it's not a part of the session from today. So I'm going here to my configuration. In this case, I'm selecting here the routing configuration, click on deploy, same process. I'm selecting here my configuration, selecting here the target. It's really important to provision the configuration in the same region as the virtual networks are. In this case, Germany West Central. Germany West Central, it will be recommended by the configuration. Click on next and click on deploy. So this will take also a few seconds. What happens in the backend, Microsoft will create the Microsoft managed resource group starting with AVNM _ and then generic name. And inside the resource group, Microsoft will add a custom root table service. And this service or this custom root table will be assigned to all virtual networks and all subnets inside the virtual network. So let's go back, go to my virtual network. In this case, I'm going to my VM01 and have a look to the configuration. What you can see here when we go to the virtual network and go on the left side to the network section, here you have a new a new section, a new area, Network Manager. And here you can see exactly what is assigned to my virtual machine inside my, my region in this case. I'm going to the Network Manager, and here you can see, okay, there is one configuration, as a network connectivity configuration assigned to the virtual machine with an hub and spoke architecture to the hub VNet Demo Hub, Demo NVM in WM Hub. And it's a group membership from my Network Manager group. Then I go ahead and go to my network settings, go to my virtual network, and click on my static routes, my effective routes. And normally, I should see here the new route on the upper right side. You can see here associated route table. This is the custom name for the route table. But here, and this is the important part here, here you can see there's one user-defined route assigned 0.0.0.0/0, and the next hop is the firewall in this case. And it's defined by the user-defined route, in this case from the Azure Virtual Network Manager. So the default route here is invalid. It's overwritten by a user-defined route, in this case from my Network Manager. So when we go to the virtual machines, you can see, okay, now ICMP is possible. I can also use a trace route from both sides. Here, the next hop is my firewall. Also from the other side, it should work also. Perfect. So now we are really connected. What we have right now is a hub and spoke architecture and also the routing over the hub, over the Azure firewall. Okay, so the next point here is when we are going to the communication. So normally, everything is now open. So we have no rules. We have no network security groups assigned. We have no limitations here. So what we can do is I'm here on the second VM and I want to connect to my first VM. It's possible because port 3389 is available. It's open between those two spoke networks. Also, the firewalls allow everything. It's not the normal case, but I want to showcase what we can do with security admin rules. So let's go to the next section, security admin rules. What we want to achieve is we want to implement a global configuration over all our virtual networks. And security admin rules in this case can help you to implement exactly this configuration. So I'm sorry, it's the wrong one. I'm sorry, this is the wrong. the wrong slide. Okay. But nevertheless, I'm going directly to my live demo. What you can do with security admin rules, let's go back to the configuration. Here you can see I have the security admin rule type in this case. What you can do is it's exactly the same like network security groups with one difference. You can define here your rule collections. And inside your rule collections, you can have more than one rule collection. Inside your rule collection, you're defining your rules. It's normally a 5-tuple rule. So you can define here your description, your priority, your action, your source, your destination. But here you can see it. Normally, when we are using network security groups, we are starting with priority 100. So you cannot use priority 123 or 99. You have to start with priority 100. The security admin rules, you can start with priority 1. It's possible. What you can also define is your action, deny, always allow, or allow. You can define your direction, inbound, outbound, your protocol, your source type, your source port, your IP address as a source, your destination, and so on. So when we are going to the action, you have here the different action types. Allow the traffic match the rule and will be allowed. The traffic match the rule and will be blocked automatically, or always allow the traffic matching and the rule be allowed regardless of the rules that the lower priority or user-defined NSGs. So in this case, always allow will be allowed and will not use or check the network security groups. So in my case, I have defined one rule and say, hey, please deny port 3389 to the destination IP address 10.1.0.0/24. So this subnet is isolated. We cannot connect to port 3389. It's a higher privileged virtual network with VMs. So it's not allowed to, from any virtual network or for the internet or for whatever, to allow to the virtual network over 3389. So we are going ahead and deploy the configuration. So go back, go to the deploy, select here once more the region, click on next, click on deploy. Will take a few seconds, but meanwhile I'm going back to the VM and go to the network configuration, and in a few seconds you can see here in the admin security rules, normally you can see here a 1. So if the new configuration is assigned, it will be popped up here. Okay, new admin security rules are assigned to the virtual to the network. So click on refresh. Hopefully it will show this in a few seconds. Okay, the configuration is assigned. Here we go. So here, now you can see here, one admin security rule is assigned. When I click to the admin security rule, we'll go back to the network manager configuration inside your virtual machine. And here you can see, okay, network configuration, there's one security admin configuration assigned, and the security admin configuration deny the inbound configuration or inbound connection from any virtual network to port 3389. So when we go to the virtual network back, so let's go to the resource group, click here to the virtual network, go to the virtual network itself. There's no subnet, there's no security group assigned to the virtual network. There's only a network manager configured, and in this case, a security admin assigned. So it's not possible to connect to the VMs inside the virtual network because the rule is assigned to the virtual network and will block the communication to port 3389. So let's test it, this configuration. Let's try it once more. And now you can see the configuration is now, the connection is now not possible because the security admin rules will block the communication. When I go ahead and assign a network security group to the virtual machine. So in this case, I'm assigning a network security group. Doesn't change anything. The reason for that is really simple. The security admin rule is the first instance, so with priority 1 is the highest priority, and inside the security admin rules, I'm blocking the communication to the VM. It's not possible, and that's the benefit what you can use with security admin rules. Okay, so one new functionality, it's not inside, it's not in my presentation. It's a new functionality what you can use with your virtual network manager is a IP address management. So here you have the ability to use the IP address management. What you have to do is you have to define your, so you have to create your IP address pool, this test pool. Test. I'm using here my region Germany West Central. I have no parent pool. I'm defining here my IP address space. Click on 10.0.0.0/16. Sorry. This one here. So click on create. So now defining my IP address space for Germany West Central, in this case, it will take a few seconds. Go to the resource. And inside the IP address pool, I can now assign child pools or resources. In my case, I want to associate resources, and a resource could be a virtual network. In my case, I'm using all virtual networks. Click here, assign. And what you can see, I'm sorry, it's not possible this way. Hopefully you can assign it now. Okay. Okay, not possible right now. But normally you can assign here your resources, in this case, your virtual network. And what you will see is, okay, how many IP addresses are used, are allocated in this IP address space, how many IP addresses are available. You can also define your static CIDRs if you want to implement on-premise IP addresses. For example, you can also define your different pools. For example, you have your global pool, you have your pool for West Europe, for Germany West Central, for East US or whatever, and you can use here a structure inside your Azure Virtual Network Manager. So this is, at the moment, it's in preview, but it's also included in Azure Virtual Network Manager. Okay, so that's it. That's from my side. So I hope you enjoy the session. I hope you like the session. One recap for Azure Virtual Manager, Network Manager. It simplifies your configuration, so you have a centralized environment to see all your network configuration. You have the ability to roll out your configuration based on your regions. You can define your network groups and assign the members from the network groups dynamically or static membership. You can roll out this. You can roll out this over CI/CD pipelines if you want. Yeah, you can use on top IPAM, the IPAM functionality of Azure Virtual Network Manager. And yeah, that's from Virtual Network Manager. But from the Experts Live, so once more, I'm really happy that I'm a member of the Experts Live in Dubai. I hope you're joining the Experts Live in person in Dubai and also visiting my session about Azure Virtual WAN. It's a different, it's a bit different to Azure Network Manager, what you can do with Azure Virtual WAN. It's also a really, really cool functionality. It's a different architecture based on hub and spoke architecture. And you have here a lot of functionality inside Virtual Network, Azure Virtual WAN. I will present live, also with live demos. So I'm really happy to join to my session. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans, for that great session. To be honest, it's I've been playing with Azure for so long, but
So
that session for me, it's like it's totally like new. To be honest, I didn't play a lot with Azure Network Manager. I can see that, especially for a company like us, we do managed services and MSP. I think this is with cross-tenant management and that centralization of IP management. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
So I think this will be great content for my team. I'll share it directly after that.
That's perfect.
Live. Yeah, my team will be happy with that. So this is pretty interesting, and I'm pretty sure that you're gonna have more deep insights when you are landing in UAE and joining us in Express Live.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, man, and have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.